All right, we are back with the match reactions today. We were not able to do one yesterday on time because of the Canada match. Of course, we had to be a little bit delayed. Crazy match, by the way. We'll get there in a second. I'm also doing this one a little bit early because there are still two matches to play as of the recording of this. Brazil v Morocco, or rather, Brazil vs Haiti is about to start, and then of course there are a bunch of matches tomorrow as well. But we also have to record the second half of our match week 2 group stage prediction. So I'm going to be going early and I'm going to be covering 6 matches instead of 4, starting with Czechia against South Africa. Now, both Swapnil and I had this match as a Czechia victory, but one big reason we had for that is that South Africa were just way too wasteful. Hugo Bruce played Lyle Foster in that first match, and Osman Apollos, who both Swapnil and I thought should have had a bigger factor, should have started, didn't start until or didn't even play until I believe late on in the second half. But Hugo Bruce here makes the right decision. He decides to sub off Lyle Foster. Lyle Foster doesn't play at all. Liz Rainier's on. And even when he comes off, he puts on Macgopa. So Lyle Foster is not playing whatsoever. And you have Osman Apollos instead finally making his way back to the starting 11. Meanwhile, for Czechia, you already know the game plan they have by now. It is the set pieces, it is the throw-ins, it is the crosses, score a goal, and then haram ball with their defense. And that's exactly how this game goes. I said that the Czechs might be able to score a goal in open play, and they'll try to play some more possession football because against South Africa, that would probably be more feasible than it would have been against the Koreans. And for about the first 10 minutes, that is what we saw. Technically speaking, this satellite goal does count as a set piece, but it is a string of some good play, and it is eventually a 1-2 by Soika and Sadalek that ends up creating that first goal. But as soon as that first goal comes in, the Czechs revert back to the greatest haram ball you have ever seen. If they win this match, they're on 3 points. They have at least somewhat of a chance of qualifying. Maybe the thinking is we get 3 points. Mexico won't be trying as hard because they'll have either locked up the group or have essentially locked up the group by then, and then we can maybe try to go for a 4th point that way. But yeah, essentially from there on, they just sit back and they hope that the South Africans will not be able to score. And I think there's actually it's not a bad idea because you look at the South Africa side, right? Osman Apollos is a baller. We've known this from the beginning. He showed it today. But the Czechs quickly realized, wait a second, if we just double Apollos the whole time, Reyners isn't going to do anything. Mexico isn't going to do anything. Nobody else here, I guess, besides Mbokazu with his occasional cross being slung in, which this tall Czech backline can deal with anyways, isn't really going to do anything. So I'm just going to go on to the facts section here. Look at the momentum chart. Look at that. As soon as the Czechs get those goals, it is all haram ball. The rest of the first half is all South Africa with the momentum. You can also see the ball possession. It is 62% in favor of South Africa. I go to the stats. In the first half, 63%, 61% in the second half. This is South Africa all on the ball, and the Czechs playing the most haram of haram balls as soon as Sadalek gets that goal. But like I said, with Osman Apollos as the only real offensive threat for the Czechs, South Africa isn't really able to do all that much. They put on these subs, like I said, Macgopa, Mofokeng, but nothing is really working until in the 83rd minute, South Africa win somewhat of a controversial penalty, and Mokoena converts. Mokoena in this match, by the way, he was quite class, not just in scoring that penalty, but his passing, his distribution, his ability to win the ball in midfield and make sure that South Africa had those chances, that possession in the opposition half to try to at least create opportunities, although that didn't go too well. That is what kept South Africa in this game. That is what allowed them to keep pushing and what ultimately allowed them to win that point. And I would say that this match is honestly quite similar to the Canada v Bosnia match, where Bosnia gets that early goal, they park the bus, Canada get way more possession, they get most of their possession probably in the opposition half, just like here. But just because you have possession, just because you're in the opposition box or even in the final third, doesn't mean you're actually creating a lot of good chances. And that was the case with the South Africa side. They never really got that threatening. They were never that close to actually scoring on the Czechs, in open play at least, because there's a difference between being a bad team and being a defensive team. The Czechs, the Bosnians. There are many examples in the World Cup this year. They're not bad teams, they're simply defensive teams. And so I think that South Africa, they do end up getting that deserved draw, but I don't know that in the same vein that I don't think Canada deserved to beat Bosnia, I don't think they deserve much more in this match. I have to give a shout out to Hugo Bruce, again, making the right decisions, being brave with those tactical adjustments. I really just feel like, though, that he doesn't have, with all due respect to Bafana, a lot of talent to work with in the South Africa side. As for the Czechs, I mean, good on the set pieces, but again, this begs the question of what can you guys do in open play? I mean, I guess we did kind of see it here somewhat, but Patrick Schick was getting, once again, he was not getting fed the ball whatsoever. He's ghosting not because he's bad, but because you need to feed your number 9 in order for him to do anything with it. And while, Soika, Kufal, they're doing good with the crosses, the set pieces look good. Kufal's obviously, his throw-ins are absolutely magic, but I'm still a little bit worried about how one-dimensional this Czech side is. 2 matches in, they have 1 point. They have to beat the Mexicans, and it is a Mexico who is much more resistant to set-piece threats than either Bafana or South Korea was. So it's pretty dark for the Czechs, I'll be honest. I don't really see how they can make it out of the group stages at this point. After South Africa, I think they have more of a chance because they get hit by a set piece in this match. I mean, a set piece really in air quotes only, but still. They get hit aerially by Mexico. The one other team in the group, though, who don't really have a huge set piece threat is the South Koreans. That's who they're playing next. And if they get a win there, they're finishing second in this group. So Bafana, they're not out yet. I obviously still favor the Koreans as of now in that match. But if that's actually going to be open play v open play, that's where Hugo Bruce, that's where Bafana are more in their preferred style of game. So I think that's going to be very interesting. Interesting for the Koreans as well, because they'll be looking to, they also have to themselves not lose that match, or else they're finishing third in 3 points, and that's no guarantee there. So very interesting last rounds in Group A that are being set up. But that's Czechia v South Africa, and now we're moving on to the Swiss against the Bosnians. And I know it says 4-1 on your screen. A, this was not a good match the majority of the way through. And B, I still have a lot of question marks about the Swiss with this Swiss team in general. So, solid back four. They control in possession. Dan Ndoye has a very fraudulent 7.4 rating here because he once again does absolutely nothing. Reader, I don't know why he's even starting. Start Ruben Vargas. I don't know what we're doing here. He does absolutely nothing as well. Also a very fraudulent rating from him. Real Mbolo plays well, but it is ultimately the hero. It is Manzambi, who is coming off the bench for Dan Ndoye, who ultimately breaks the deadlock for the Swiss national team. The Bosnians basically tried to do the same tactic they did against Canada, which is a set-piece threat plus haram ball, like the Czechs as well in that last match rather. But against this back line with Akanji, with the height and the aerial ability of this back line, they're not really able to get much out of that, as both Swabel and I predicted. Look at the stats of this match, right? The Bosnians create just 0.23 expected goals this entire match, and no big chances. They don't really have anything else. Frankly, this midfield is not good enough, especially against Granit Xhaka, but this really in general is not good enough to add a World Cup play in possession. So the Bosnians, like the Czechs, only have this one way of playing. Might be enough against Qataris, we'll see, but it means they're also not very adaptable. But at the same time, they play that defensive style of football, and just how the Canadians really struggled to break down the back line, so did the Swiss. Because look at this. It's the 74th minute when that first goal comes in. Before then, it's not even like the Swiss v Qatar game, where the Swiss just missed a bunch of chances. They're really creating nothing. It is, like I said, Manzambi coming off the bench, a ball thrown in the mixer, not really cleared out properly. It happens to perfectly be right where Manzambi is, and he scores it. And again, this is not to, take credit off Manzambi, because it's an excellent finish. It's a very difficult volley, and he pulls it off perfectly. But that goes to show the Swiss were not really doing so much. Now, once Muharamovic gets that red card, floodgates are opened up, right? Vargas gets a goal, Manzambi gets a brace, Xhaka penalty. Mamic gets a goal as well, very similar to the Monzambi goal. Just, ball in the mixer, Mamic is in the right place, and he also scores a pretty good banger. But before that red card, like I said, the Swiss were not really creating that many chances. This very much could have ended as a 1-1 match. The Swiss are on 2 points, needing a win against Canada, and then, who knows what happens from there. But the Swiss, luckily for them, they're now on 4 points. They're safe. They're going to go through to the next round. But a lot of question marks. From these two matches, in my opinion, Dan and Doi, get the hell out of the starting lineup for me. I don't know what this man is doing. No offense to the Nottingham Forest fans in the audience, but for the Swiss national team, at least in these last two matches, he has done absolutely jack shit. Monzambi has to start, and don't do this fucking bullshit with Reader, this double striker formation. Just play Ruben Vargas, man. It should be Mbolo, Vargas, and Monzambi, in my opinion, for the Swiss front three. And if they play that against the Canadians have a solid defense. I think the Swiss should still be in a pretty good position. Also against Canada, Canada plays a high press, and I think the Swiss will probably do better against that than they have against these last two teams who are playing low blocks. That's an issue for another time, though. And as for the Bosnians, Dzeko and Demirovic have still not done anything in this tournament so far, and I think that is once again due to the open play. Alija Begovic, Memic, Tagovic, when he comes on, these guys, they're good at crosses, but again, in open play, this Bosnia side does feel a little bit one-dimensional, and they're going to have to win against Qatar with this 4-1 loss. Also, Muvramovic being out, he's the heart of the defense, right? Without him, that is also going to be a significant loss against Qatar. So we'll see what happens there. But on to Qatar. Yeah, that was bad. That was really, really bad by the Qataris. I think they're finished. I'm not going to lie. Look, I'm just going to start by talking a little bit about Qatar, and then after that, I'm going to move on to Canada. Akram Afif, once again, is playing too deep. Ali Ahmed, I don't know why he's not playing at all. Miguel is, you would normally want him to be slinging those long balls, but against this maple press, he was just completely ineffective. And yeah, these two red cards basically kill off the game for Qatar. Not that there was much going on anyways beforehand. And then, I guess the one stand would be Abonada, actually. He has a 5.1, which seems bad on the surface, but then you realize he's not in the red when he's conceded 6 goals. It's actually because Abonada was low-key cooking. It was very unfortunate where a lot of chances would be like either Laird or David would shoot it, Abonada would save it, and then the other striker would be right there perfectly at the right moment to just tap it in. But Abonada actually played quite well. The unfortunate thing for Qatar is, one, these two injuries are not, they're not nothing. Like, El Amin is pretty important, I would say, for the Qatari back line. But it is when you're down 6-0, one, even if you finish third, if you're on 4 points, depending on how many teams get 4 points, that GD might be so bad they don't go through anyways. And also, how do you recover mentally from this, man? How do you recover mentally from this? If they can and they do something against Bosnia, then hats off to the Qataris, but I just don't see it whatsoever. Okay, on to Canada. The bad news is the Ismail Kone injury. This Kone injury is, I can't stress enough how unfortunate that is, because one, he is one of the keys, not only to the maple press, but also to the physicality and the progression, the ball progression, the playmaking of the Canadian midfield. Without him, Nathan Saliba is a good option, but that is a big, big loss. And, obviously for this match, it doesn't matter, but he's out for the tournament, of course. He's probably out for 6 months, if we're being honest. And against Switzerland, against other teams in the tournament, that is where this becomes a big issue for Canada. But today, other than that, of course, all amazing news. So Larin gets his second goal in 2 games. Kyle Larin, by the way, has not had a good performance for the national team in 2 years. And then his only 2 good performances in the last 2 years is the first game of the World Cup and the second game of the World Cup, which I'm very happy about, to be honest, as a Canadian, because that means he's fighting for him at the right time. And if he's shit for the last 2 years and he's shit for the next 2 years, the one time I need him to be good is during the World Cup. Also, Jonathan David gets his hat trick. The first goal, I believe it's a very good volley. He does get a tap it in there. There's also a good play where he makes a nice turn. Jonathan David has not had the most consistent year for either club or country. But this hat trick, while not the most impressive because it's Qatar, that is a confidence booster. That's him finding his form back after the disaster clash against Bosnia, and coming into with this form, coming into the Switzerland match, coming into the later knockout stage matches, because Canada are basically in the knockouts already. Jonathan David and Kyle Larin both being on form at this time is best case scenario for the Canadian national team. It is best case scenario. Ali Ahmed and Tajon Buchanan finding form as well. Very nice. And the other pieces of good news are, one, you can see that Derek Cornelius only plays 46 minutes because Moisey Bombito is back. Our best defender, our defensive stalwart, is back, number one. And number two, Alphonso Davies is back as well. He didn't play in this match, but reporting beforehand, Jesse Marsh said that he will play, that Davies is ready to play, and he will get minutes if necessary. Obviously, as you can see by the scoreline, it was not necessary, but that means he is all good to go for that all-important Switzerland match. So a big loss in Ishmael Kone, but two big returns in Moisey Bombito and Alphonso Davies. Anything else I want to say? I mean, look, Nathan Sliba, he looked good. He scored a screamer free kick, and he's a solid player. He is quality. It is still going to be harder without Ishmael Kone. But other than that, this team is looking in good shape, man. We'll see what happens against the Swiss. Obviously, that's going to be much harder than Qatar or even really Bosnia. But this is history. Canada has never won a game in a World Cup before. They never even have drawn a game in a World Cup before that Bosnia match. And now all of a sudden they are guaranteed. I mean, not mathematically, but with 4 points in that GD, I mean, they're going to go to the knockouts. And if they get a win or even a draw against the Swiss, they could finish first in that group. They could finish first in Group B, which means they'll play a third-place team in the round of 32, and they'll be playing at home. Obviously, easier said than done, but Canada right now, they are in a very good position. On to our second host of this video, though, and it is Mexico against Korea. This match, instead of at the Azteca, it is at Guadalajara Stadium. And funnily enough, there is one player on this Mexican national team who has a lot of experience playing Guadalajara. It is the Chivas player himself, Luis Romo. Romo did not start in that first match, and I don't think he should start for the Mexican national team, to be honest. I would rather have Lira Gutierrez and Fidalgo. And Romo, in my opinion, I don't think he was very good in this match, but you have the South Korean keeper, Sung-Gyu Kim, making a horrible mistake. This is why he has a 5.8 match rating. He jumps to get the ball. It slips out of his hands. It goes straight to Luis Romo, who just gets a free shot on goal, an open net, and of course he scores. And from there on, it is the Mexican haram ball. It is the low block. It is the physicality, which South Korea are just utterly unable to ultimately break. At halftime, there was actually a lot of boos in the stadium for Mexico because they were playing such a defensive style of football. There were a few chances. Alvarado puts in a great cross for Quinones around maybe like the 25th minute or so, but Kim Sung-gyu has no problem saving it. There was later chances from Quinones to Jimenez, a cross in, also saved by Kim Sung-gyu. To be honest, those were probably Mexico's two best chances other than this Romo sitter, funnily enough. And Kim Sung-gyu does very well in both of them, so he actually doesn't have too bad of a game, although I guess that gets canceled out by this horrific mistake. And then, I mean, defensively, look, I would rather still start Israel Reyes than Jorge Sanchez because I don't think he really contributed much to the offense here. He's a more offensively minded fullback, and I think he had one pretty solid run in there. He had one pretty solid run, but he doesn't really do much outside of that. Like, I think it was it Lear or was it Gutierrez balling behind? He makes run at it, and then he hits the side netting. But other than that, I don't really have any complaints. I would say Edson Alvarez slotting in for Cesar Montes in the back line. I mean, he did a pretty fine job. And Rangel, he doesn't really get tested too much other than basically the last minute. He has to make a clutch double save. Very Ochoa-esque, if I will. And it keeps Mexico from conceding, and it ultimately allows them to have already statistically locked up the first position in Group A. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of complaints, I feel like, about this Mexico team's style of play, but honestly, they're executing it pretty perfectly, right? It's just haram ball, set pieces, and inshallah, and it's doing quite well right now. I'm not gonna lie, it is doing quite well. You had Obed Vargas who came on, surprisingly, instead of putting on Hiberto Mora, he actually gets a few cracks at the shot. One of them was a quite solid volley that Kim Sung-gyu saves as well. But yeah, nothing else really to talk about here, in my opinion. Santi Mendes comes on, he doesn't really do anything. But as for this Korean side, I put a lot of stock in this team after that win against the Czechs, and I gotta say, a lot of that I'm losing right now. Because Hwang and Bom, I don't think had a good game. Um, Lee Kang-in was decent, but not great. And Sung Hyung-min, once again, is missing key chances where, yes, while he contributes to the team in other ways, you need your number 9 to score. And even when he comes off, Oh Sung-gyu, he doesn't really do too much. There's one point where I think Lee Kang-in puts a cross in, and if Oh Sung-gyu gets on it, if he just connects, if he just makes a touch, it is essentially a tap-in, but he's unable to. And other than that, this is a South Korea side which honestly thrived off of individual quality and using those individual players to progress the ball and make things happen. There wasn't a whole lot of that in this match. To be fair, I think they were quite wasteful with their chances. I mean, you see a lot of Korean chances here. This is the double save, by the way, near the end of the match by Rangel. But other than that, it's not that they don't get chances. I mean, they have more expected goals than Mexico, but their finishing is just really bad in this match. They still have, I believe, they would still have, South Africa to play. Hopefully, you would want to do better here, but there's a lot of questions. I said give Sung Hyun-min another chance before benching him for Oh Sung-gyu. He didn't do anything with that second chance here, right? So I don't know what to make of this for the Koreans. Is it a disaster? No, but you will be thinking that you could have gotten a draw here if you were just a little bit more clinical. Mexico, though, again, not the most flashy performance, but you did what you need to do. And now you have Javier Aguirre with an opportunity to do some experimentation in advance of that round of 32 match. Could we see? I mean, I've always been clamoring for this. Could we see Gilberto Mora start a match? Just put him on the big stage, see what he can do. Worst case scenario, you lose that match. You're still first in the group anyways. I don't know how experimental Javier Aguirre would want to be, but this is his one chance to do so. So we'll see what happens there. But that is it for Group A and Group B. On to today's matches, and our third host is the United States, who get a very solid 2-0 win against the Aussies. Coming to this game, Tony Popovich, I've got some questions about the starting lineup because you're really starting Velupile over Aaron Kunda? After that masterclass that Aaron Kunda dropped against Turkey, we're really playing this guy instead. I understand that there is a desire to be a little bit more defensive, but not only is Aaron Kunda that guy, his link-up play with Torre is so important. And what makes this more annoying is that it is only in the 46th minute, the start of the second half, when Torre comes off, that Aaron Kunda comes on, which is just whatever. And then, I mean, Metcalf as well, I think, should definitely be starting. And I would say they played in the second half. I mean, I know I'm skipping forward a little bit. The Aussies played way better in the second half. And it begs the question, if you actually just started your best player as Tony Popovich at the beginning of the match, what would have happened? But anyhow, the U.S. notably are missing Christian Pulisic in this match. Instead, they use their high-flying fullbacks, their Jedi Robinsons, their Serginho Dests, to basically do a lot of the work and try to keep that defensive and offensive wing positions working. And it does work quite well. I mean, it is Jedi Robinson who cuts in, great dribbling, gets past Sarkadi, and it is Burgess who is basically forced into an own goal. The U.S. is essentially knocking the entire time. In the first half, they have almost all the possession. The Aussies are really forced to defend a lot, and ultimately, under all that pressure, it is quite lucky, to be fair, but the U.S. near the end of, close to halftime, it's a shot from distance. It is deflected perfectly into Alex Friedman's path, and he gets essentially a tap-in for the U.S. to lead 2-0 by halftime. Now, notably, this was very different than the Paraguay match, where Paraguay just sat back, defended, and died. they weren't able to really retain possession or get in the other team's half for more than 5 seconds. But that's not the case for the Aussies. I mean, I go here. You look at this match momentum. There were pockets where the Aussies were looking a little decent. It's not only blue in the first half the way that it probably would have been for the United States. And they don't really create too much with it. But I would even say, especially that second goal, the US is a little bit lucky to score. The Aussies really hold their own defensively. Sirkadi and Sudar, I think, once again, were quite solid. Sudar, very good in the air. And at the stroke of halftime, I mean, the US is leading 2-0, but it really doesn't feel like the capitulation that it was when they played Paraguay. Now, like I said, start of the second half, Guerrilla comes on, Connor Metcalf comes on, and Aaron Kuda comes on. And as soon as that second half starts, it is a completely different game. If it was all USA attack and Australia defense in the first half, it is now all Australia attack and USA defense in that second half, which, again, this momentum chart, you can see the dichotomy of the two halves here being played out. The US initially does get some chances. There was one where Balogun is basically through on goal, but then before he gets a shot off in the 1v1 against Beach, Alejandro Sirkadi just comes out of absolutely nowhere with an incredible last-ditch tackle. But I feel like that was their only real chance. The US's only real chance of the second half. Around the 60th minute, Lecky gets an injury, and on comes Christian Volpato, someone who, to be honest, I did not really know much about. But his first touch, I'm not even joking, his first touch of the match is a huge, it's a ball in behind for Aaron Kunda, and Aaron Kunda gets to the edge of the box. He cuts it back right to Volpato for his second touch of the match, which is a good shot on goal, which doesn't go in, but it shows the attacking intent that Volpato, that Aaron Kunda, that Metcalf were playing with at the start of the second half. Again, I don't know who this Volpato guy is, but I think he was quite good, honestly. Offensively speaking, he was generating chances. He was doing well in ball progression. I was quite impressed with this guy, to be quite honest. But as the match goes on, it is all the Aussies. I mean, Aaron Kunda, again, Metcalf, they're putting in these chances. Sirkadi and Sutar are even trying to go up. Sutar trying to win some headers off of corners and set pieces. Not that there's a goal that comes off of it. There were some great balls that the Aussies were putting in. The US in midfield are able to somewhat neutralize them, especially Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie, in my opinion. And ultimately speaking, it is the US fans. It is somehow this back line with Chris Richards, Alex Friedman, who is doing absolutely everything on both ends of the court, and Tim Ream, who is apparently he somehow still got it. That combined with the electric atmosphere, able to somehow contain this, with all their key players, quite solid Aussie back line or Aussie front line, and stop them from really getting too close to ever scoring in this match. There was one point, I think around the 80 or something minute, where Australia gets a point-blank chance, and I believe it was Tyler Adams who just about gets his body to the ball and blocks it with a great last-ditch tackle, to be quite fair. And ultimately, in the first half where it's all the US, they're able to break down the Aussie back line, and when it's the Aussies' turn to try to break down the US back line, they're unable to do it. I don't think the Aussies played bad, to be quite honest. Again, that second half is when they subbed on the players that should have been starting. So if you're going to blame somebody for Australia not losing this match, I wouldn't blame any of the players. I'd probably blame Tony Popovich, if anybody. I don't think the Aussies played bad at all. It's much more of a US credit situation where the attack is firing. The defense is surprisingly doing well, because I thought that's what was going to be the weak spot. The midfield, Tillman, Adams, McKennie, they are all cooking right now. And look, I said at the start of the tournament, in our first World Cup video, that the US can make a quarterfinals, but they have to play at their best. They're playing at their best right now. I'm not going to say anything other than that, but they are playing at their best right now. And not only are they playing at their best right now, with this win against Australia, I believe, have they? No. I guess if Paraguay wins or draws against Turkey later tonight, the US will have secured first place in this group. Otherwise, if Turkey win, they'll have to at least get a draw against Turkey. But still, a very good position that the United States has now put themselves in. Pochettino is at the wheel, apparently. He's cooking. I have never seen the U.S. play this well before, but it's all coming together at the perfect time, so fair enough to them. Finally, last match that I will be covering today, it is Scotland against Morocco. This was a snoozer. I'll be completely honest. The first about 10 minutes of this match was interesting, and then after that, it picked up a little bit at the end, but it was quite bad. Scotland, they played a 4-1-4-1 formation instead, or I guess a 4-5-1 instead of their regular formation. Scott McTominay, Ryan Christie, and Lewis Ferguson all starting. Ryan Christie, notably, who did not start, I believe, in the first match against Haiti. They tried to win for the midfield. When I saw the way they were playing, I was questioning. You're having this midfield. You're kind of pushing up your fullbacks, Robertson and Nathan Patterson, at least at the beginning of the match, being pushed up. Do you not know who you're playing against? You really think you can beat Buwadi, Unaki, and Alanui in the midfield? You're really going to let Brahim Diaz and Alcanus get all this space? Funnily enough, it takes about 70 seconds for, once again, Brahim Diaz and Saibari. Not exactly a carbon copy, but it is once again Brahim Diaz putting in a ball in behind in a wonder strike by Sabari that gets Morocco that first goal. And again, with Scotland trying to play for this midfield, they do get a little more conservative with their fullbacks after that first goal. They can't do anything against this Morocco midfield. They're trying to play in possession. Nothing is working. And it takes until about, I want to say the stoppage time in the first half for Scotland to register a shot. I'll go to the stat sheet. This John McGinn header is Scotland's first not shot on target, which they don't get a shot on target all game. That was their first shot of the match. As for Morocco, I think they're very wasteful the entire match, other than Saibari. Alcanus gets a very good chance early on in the first half. I think it's one of these. Yeah, this one right here. I mean, this was essentially nobody near him. He could have just taken a touch before shooting it, but then he tries to go for it first time and he blazes it past the crossbar. Very reminiscent of how he played at Leicester City. Great dribbling, great technical ability, but his finishing is quite questionable. There was this chance also from Alcanus early on in the second half. It's actually a very well-worked corner. I'm surprised it's only 0.01 XG because essentially Alcanus is open, though I guess it's somewhat of a tight angle. But Aaron Gunn reads the play quite well, and he makes a solid save. And yeah, I mean, very wasteful. There are a couple players that are getting chances. I think Alanui got a good chance at one point. Mooney near the end of the match, maybe the last minute or so. Maybe I can see it here as well. It must have been one of these. Yeah, this one, 90 plus 5th minute. Arguably should have scored here as well in the fast break in transition, but yeah, I think quite wasteful from Morocco. But if you thought Morocco was wasteful, again, no shots on target from the Scottish national team. And what really disappointed me about Morocco is, yeah, you get an off to a finishing, fair enough. But after the second hydration break, Morocco just sort of sat back and just tried to park the bus against the Scottish national team, which to me makes no sense because one, you're better than them, and two, you drew with Brazil. You didn't beat them. You need to rack up the GD, man. Why are you trying to park the bus against the Scottish national team? So the Scots, they try to start getting possession. They start trying to somewhat create chances. They're putting in these crosses. But again, part of this is Morocco's defense, sure, but their finishing is so dreadful in this match. Around the 84th or 5th minute, Scott McTominay arguably gets fouled in the box. Maybe Scotland should have gotten a penalty. But other than that, nothing is generated whatsoever. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is a very bad match, I think, for both sides, and I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed with everybody involved, to be quite honest. I guess except for Ben Doak, he did some stuff off the bench once again, like last time. Lyndon Dykes tried to do some stuff. He was at least attempting, but he also created nothing as well. Chemistine Talby, I think, also got the chance near the end of the match, but I'm not going to bother finding it. It goes nowhere. So yeah, I mean, this match, again, snoozer, nothing really happened. I don't really have anything else to say about this, to be quite honest. I'm just going to end the video here because I've already missed 33 minutes of Brazil against Haiti, and Brazil already have scored a goal. So, see ya. Match previews for second half of Match Week 2 coming up very soon. Like, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.